Ashley, welcome to the podcast.
Hey, thanks for having me.
Yeah, absolutely. We're excited about this. We took a little brief break over Christmas, and now we're back at it. So excited to jump into this, and thank you for being available.
Yeah, of course.
For people who don't know your background, go ahead and just give us a brief kind of overview of what brought you to Pensacola in the first place and where you're working now, and we'll kind of jump off from there.
Okay, so I originally am from Charlotte, and I come from a blue-collar family. Dad worked electric my whole life. My mom was a stay-at-home mom. So one-income family, 3 kids. There wasn't a lot of room for saving for college. So when I was looking around at colleges, I came across PCC, and I realized it was a lot cheaper than most colleges. So that's kind of what drew me to Pensacola to get my education. And then from there, I started out as a business management major. And the more classes I took, I realized I loved finance. So I switched my major to finance. And I got my first internship at Wells Fargo. And then I'm now in the role of a financial analyst at JLL, which is a commercial real estate company. And I've just been working with the FP&A team and kind of learning and growing there.
Okay, FP&A team, what does that stand for?
Financial planning and analysis.
There you go. Okay, awesome. That's exciting. So let's break that down just a little bit. What classes were you taking? When did you kind of realize, okay, I want to switch to finance? What exposure had you had to finance where you're like, okay, this will be a little more my speed?
Yeah, so I took a super basic financial planning class, and I was like, okay, I really like numbers and I like seeing how everything interacts with each other. So I started to research more on what I would want as a career path, because I didn't really know at that point what I wanted to do. And to be completely honest, I was looking at what the highest salary was.
I think everybody before they go to college is like high paying. They just Google high paying jobs out of college, probably.
Yeah. So I was kind of looking at what was highest paying in finance, and I came across financial analysis. And that was really interesting to me because I like looking at things from that macro perspective and then kind of seeing how they interact with each other. So after I took that class, and I spoke with my aunt, she is a senior vice president at a financial firm in New York City. So she knows the industry, the sector, she knows all of the best things to do.
That's helpful.
Yeah. So I called her and we kind of just talked about it, and that kind of helped me pave my way to where I am now.
That's exciting. Okay. So, I feel like that's a big transition from management to finance.
Yeah,
I feel like a lot of people do the opposite. That's what I did. I started off as finance, and then I switched to marketing and management because it's very much, I think finance is one of those things that you realize that it's a high paying position, and it's like, okay, I'll do this. And then you start doing classes.
Also have to put in the work,
you really do.
Yeah.
So it's really, that's exciting. I was kind of surrounded by finance majors when I was in school, and everybody gave me a hard time when I switched majors, but I was like, this is way more my speed. Now you graduate this coming May. Okay. Fantastic.
Yeah. So the place that I'm with now, I originally interned with them over the summer. And then they offered me a part-time position while I'm finishing my degree under the condition that I'm going to graduate in May, and then I would probably get a full-time offer from them.
That's exciting. It's good to have something lined up. I feel like a lot of people graduate and they're like, oh, what do I do now?
Yeah. That job security is definitely helping me.
Yeah, 100%. So what did you do to find your internship at Wells Fargo and then at JLL? I think that's going to be a really, really helpful tidbit.
Yeah, so I originally, honestly, it really isn't who you know nowadays. And my dad had a guy who worked for him, and his wife actually worked at Wells Fargo, so he got me in contact with her. And not much came out of it. She was able to get me in contact with the hiring manager, but it was kind of just like, I feel like this is going to be a dead end.
It's a big company.
Yeah, I'm just humoring
it's
you.
Huge. So I was just kind of like, I'm probably not going to get it. I'm only a sophomore. I'm still young. I don't know enough. And to anyone who's entering the workforce trying to get internship, I would say apply for every opportunity that you can do, because one is going to come back. One is going to come back. So I ended up actually getting an interview with the hiring manager, and from there it just was like we hit it off, and I feel like I have the job right there. So I would just say educate yourself on the company that you're applying for, and also kind of like the industry, because I'll be honest, when I applied for that internship, I didn't know anything about consumer lending, which is what the internship was for, and I knew nothing about Wells Fargo. I didn't know their values. I didn't even know who their CEO was.
Interesting.
So yeah, I would just say educate yourself, because the more knowledgeable you are and the more you're able to talk on their level, they're going to appreciate that because they know you've put in the work.
Yeah, I feel like that's an interesting point, because obviously you don't know what you don't know. And when you're vying for a position, I think it's easy to just make the assumption, well, they're going to train me to do the job.
Right.
But also that self-education, that self-start mentality, or taking that initiative to actually learn about the company and about the job that you'll be doing, I'm sure that's incredibly helpful.
Yeah, for sure.
So did they grill you over that a little bit about not knowing much about Wells Fargo, or?
No, not at all. That was just his kind of piece of advice. He would say, okay, if you're really serious about getting into this company, educate yourself on our core values, on who our CEO is, look at our stock price every once in a while, just know how the company's doing in the news. Because if you're going to work for a company, you kind of want to know how they're viewed in the public and all of those things as well. So
100%. Well, that's exciting. So obviously you had some success at that internship and then kind of moved on from there. What was your day-to-day like working for Wells Fargo? What was your kind of job title, and what was your, like I said, day-to-day responsibilities?
Yeah, so I was in the consumer lending part of the bank. So I was actually put in the home loan, which is kind of funny because that's like the back end of what you're doing.
Correct. Yeah.
So I was getting to see how a home loan was approved. So the auditing process, the underwriting, checking credit histories, all of those things. I was seeing that. And I would say the Wells Fargo internship was definitely a turning point in my professional career, not just because I was able to like understand what I was doing every day, but I was able to network with people, and I feel like that's so valuable. Honestly, before my Wells internship, I probably wouldn't even be able to sit here and talk to you right now. Like, I was so timid and scared in a professional setting. I wouldn't talk to people. Like, if someone approached me, I would be like, oh, please don't come talk to me. Like, I was so nervous. But honestly, the first night of our networking opportunities at Wells Fargo, I was introducing myself to vice presidents. I was inserting myself in conversations.
Wow.
Because I feel like finance is kind of cutthroat, and you have to be able to do that.
100%. And that's a good point, because the bottom line is, it doesn't matter if you're comfortable doing that or not. You have to.
Or else you're going to fall out.
Exactly. Yeah. So, I mean, what switch did you just decide before you went in there, like, okay, I have to do this?
So the main thing, I went to my dad and I was like, Dad, I am so nervous. And he was like, just get it done. And I was like, all right, I'm just going to get it done.
That's pretty good advice. Just do it.
Yeah, he did not baby me. He was like, if you want it, go in there and get it. And I was just like, all right, switch flipped. And I was like, okay,
it's such basic advice, but for some people, most people, that's all they need is someone to tell them just do it. That's awesome.
Yeah, 100%. Well, that's exciting. And I mean, that's good knowledge for you to have in consumer lending, just understanding the process.
Yeah, when I want to buy my own house.
Well, exactly. And just in general, to have those kind of different little, that understanding of different parts of business and loans. I mean, real estate is such a huge thing. Now, obviously, commercial and residential are very different. Do you feel like the things that you learned in residential were beneficial in any way when you moved into commercial, or?
I'd say so, just for my own personal knowledge. I don't think it helped much for the commercial side because it's such a bigger scale.
Yeah.
Especially with the company I'm with now. But I would definitely say to anyone, if you have the opportunity, it's very beneficial. Yeah.
Yeah, 100%. Well, that's cool. So you went from Wells Fargo and the networking you talked about, just kind of meeting people and things like that. I'm sure your LinkedIn profile grew tremendously while you were there. So having said that, then what prompted you to start looking for a new position, and how did you find JLL?
So I thought about it and I was like, okay, Wells Fargo was a cool experience, but I want to be able to expand my industry knowledge and things like that. So I was like, okay, I'm going to try looking somewhere else, because I liked the consumer lending internship, but I knew it wasn't what I wanted to do long term. So I applied to Bank of America to their FMAP program, and that was a program that I was recommended by from a previous person who had already done it, and it sounded like everything I wanted to do. So I actually received word back from them. I had multiple interviews, maybe 2 or 3 over the phone and video, and I actually got flown out to Charlotte to be interviewed.
Wow.
And that was extensive. It was 2 days of interviews by senior vice presidents. And I felt like I rocked those interviews. I was so confident. And they were like, okay, you'll hear back in a week or 2. So I was like, great, awesome. Can't wait. To this day, I've not heard anything back from Bank of America.
Yikes. Wow. I was going to ask for your advice on interviews, but probably better not.
No, but I was so upset about it. I was like, wow, I cannot believe that they didn't even tell me no. Like,
yeah, you didn't hear anything.
No, nothing. I even reached out to hiring manager and everything. So I was like, okay, well, obviously I need a plan B because I'm not going to just sit at home all summer.
Yeah.
And so I literally was just applying to every single thing that I saw that I thought was finance or like anything that I could do. And I ran into JLL and I was like, well, I don't know anything about this company. So I researched them and I was like, oh, it's commercial real estate. That interests me. So I ended up applying and I had a call back from the hiring manager and she was like, okay, we're going to do this interview. If I think you'll do well, I'll pass you on to the other managers that are going to be running your account. So she did. I had, I think, 4 interviews over the phone with people, and then I ended up getting a call back that I got the position. So it's not for the faint of heart. Trying to find a position, whether it's in finance or in any business industry. It's
especially, especially in finance or in whatever industry you've chosen. I mean, it's commercial real estate here, but you're going through, like you said, multiple rounds of interviews and then you didn't even get a call back. I mean, you gotta be pretty strong in what your goals are, to just stick with it and continue, even though you have been disappointed, presumably, multiple times,
and confident in what you're interested in.
Yeah, that's true.
Because you didn't quit. I mean, after 2 days of interviews, it was probably pretty grueling, but you came back and like, well, let's see where I can go next. You didn't give up.
That's cool. So how long have you been at JLL then?
Since June of this year, so probably about 6 months.
Okay,
now.
about 6 months, and then you're looking to get into a full-time position after graduation. That's exciting. So are you going to be doing the same thing then that you're after graduation, or are you just going to move into full-time doing the same job that you're doing now?
I believe so, yes.
Okay, gotcha. So what does your day-to-day look like here where you're at?
A lot.
Okay.
So I am responsible for month-end estimates, any forecasting, quarterly forecasts, and things like that. We are responsible for recording. So back up. I'm on the Bank of America account. Bank of America outsources its real estate between 2 companies, CBRE and JLL. Obviously JLL being my company. And what we are responsible for is forecasting all of their expenses. So cleaning and janitorial, repairs and maintenance, write-offs, depreciation, all of those things. So within my team, we each own an account, per se. So write-offs is my account, for example. Depreciation is someone else's account, all of those things. So I go in and we do a 4-year forecast, and we forecast out what we think the expenses will be for those 4 years.
Wow.
Yeah. So that's one thing that I'm still learning. I'm actually in the middle of it right now. We're doing our last quarterly forecast, and it's not as difficult as I thought it would be.
I mean, that sounds really intense.
It's involved. It's definitely involved, but I definitely feel like I've been set up well to learn. But I also, there's just a lot of different things that I do day to day. But those are definitely the main ones, is month end and quarterly forecast.
Interesting. So did you have any kind of experience with that before you started, or?
No.
I mean, that's a really kind of a broad job type responsibility.
Yeah. So in my internship, they were kind of introducing me to it, but I didn't get assigned the responsibility on my own. And then from there, I was just kind of like, okay, here's your account.
Yeah.
So I was just like, oh no, like, what am I gonna do? But honestly, it's a great experience, and I have grown to love it. I mean, I look at spreadsheets all day, and that's not for everybody, but
it's not for me, that's for sure.
Yeah,
I love it. I honestly, I really hope that it ends up working out.
That's so interesting. Looking at spreadsheets all day. That's something. When I hear that, I just think, oh, there's no way. But everybody is
between a finance major that switched to marketing. And
that's exactly right. I was just going to talk about Evan, our mutual friend, Evan McCracken. He's been on the podcast before. I remember before he got married, he and his fiance, they're both very analytical people, and they made a spreadsheet for everyone who was going to come to their wedding, and they assigned a probability to the amount of people who were invited to the amount of people who would come, and then use that to calculate how many spots they should rent or whatever it was. And I went in and he explained all of it, because he's very proud of his Excel prowess. Oh, yes. He explained all of it to me, and I was like, you freaking nerd. I cannot believe that they put all that together. But I mean, hey, it's valuable. Again, somebody's got to do it. Yeah. So write-offs, I mean, I feel like that was definitely a learning curve as well. And you said you're still kind of learning it and getting comfortable with the job. I'm sure we've talked about this before because his wife is working for Navy Federal, and she's getting a lot more comfortable with the job, but you know, it takes time, it takes a lot of time. But what are some things, maybe this is a poor question, but as far as write-offs, I mean, what are you in charge?
What am I writing off?
Yeah. What are you writing off, and how do you calculate those forecasts?
Yeah, so for write-offs, it's any time, say the bank is closing a lease is expiring, that's a write-off. Say we're making a sale of a building that we own, like an ATM, we're deciding to sell it, that's a write-off. If a square footage changes, say we own this huge Bank of America tower and we're going to give the bottom 3 floors away, that's a write-off because it's no longer a square footage space. So all things like that. And the forecast itself is a part of a lot of teams putting things together. So like we work very closely with our strategy team and they give us their projected numbers. And then from there, we kind of just forecast it out by kind of whatever previous data we have.
Sure.
It's really difficult to gauge. But I feel like we're given a lot of the information, and especially on the bank side, they give us a lot of help on kind of, because, I mean, we have to get as close to the real numbers as we can.
100%. Yeah, that's the purpose of forecasting.
Yeah. So normally I would say my forecasting versus the actuals is about 1 to 2 million off, which is fairly good.
When you're dealing with massive numbers. Yeah.
Right.
But I mean, it sounds like a big number, but.
Yeah. Write-offs, typically every month we have about 10 million in write-offs.
Really?
So I normally get in between 1 to 2 million of that gauge.
That's impressive.
That is impressive. That's crazy. I think it's something, there's so many moving parts in every business.
Yes.
And I think that's something that you don't realize when you go, especially when you go to college. You're like, okay, management, marketing, accounting, or finance. You know, I can get a job in finance or a job in management, but that's so broad. I mean, and there's just so many different things. You can find a job that, like you said, you're really enjoying this. Maybe you'll move on from this and do something else. I'm sure you will at some point, but you can find a job that's literally doing all day exactly what you enjoy to do. There's so many different positions and things available. And I think that's one thing that you just don't understand that until you get into the workforce. Yeah, I completely agree. Yeah. So, well, that's cool. I'm trying to think. I don't want to grill you too much more about where you're at JLL. I think probably I'd just like to go over how you feel like college prepared you. If that's a good question that you feel like you can formulate an answer on the fly. And then Dan, do you have anything else that?
No, I keep kind of thinking over. So, I guess my biggest question would be what advice, and you did say, you know,
that's true,
look around for whatever in your field that you feel you would be, capable of performing. But like you went into JLL not knowing anything about it. So I guess my advice would be, how did you get yourself to that point in your own mind where you're like, I'm just going to go for it and I'm going to learn on the fly. And then how do you kind of go about researching those positions?
Yeah.
That's a good question.
So I guess to answer that, I kind of started out, I mean, at that point I was kind of desperate. I was like, I'm going to take whatever I can get. But honestly, I honestly feel like to be a successful business professional, you have to have your mindset first. You have to
Agreed. You
have to be in that mindset of, okay, I am going to go get it. And even though there might be 12 roadblocks on the way, we're still going to push through them.
Yeah. It's going to be work no matter what you want.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And I feel like if someone's passionate enough about something, then they will, work it out in their head to where, okay, I really want this. I am going to put in the work to get it. And as far as researching the positions that I wanted, I used a lot of normal job posting sites, so LinkedIn, Indeed, things like that. And if I saw something that looked financial and I didn't know what it was, I would just go Google. What does this person do for their job? Like,
yeah,
that's as much as you can do.
Find their job description, I'm sure.
Yeah, so I would look for job descriptions. I would go on some other companies' sites and say, okay, if they have this position available, what's the job description here? And honestly, especially I found at banks and financial institutions, their job descriptions are 12 pages long, and I don't know what half of the things mean. But it doesn't matter, because at the end of the day, when you get there, if they felt like you were capable enough to hire you, they're going to give you the tools to help you figure it out.
Yeah. And that comes back to, like you said, mindset, and really just taking that initiative and being the kind of person who would succeed at a job like that, even if you don't necessarily have all the knowledge. I think a lot of people they're like, I can't find a job. And then, well, that doesn't help you. I mean, what do you need to change and what do you need to do to make it happen? So
then echoing off that, you said you went into the interview, I mean, obviously not knowing anything about it, but how did you present yourself and how did you kind of work through all of those obstacles in the interview where obviously they called you back?
Yeah, I would honestly say confidence is key. If you act like you know what you're doing, you're set. But one good thing about a lot of these interviews is I'm still in college, so they understand I don't know everything. So there wasn't a lot of analytical questions and things that were way above my head. It was more so, how do you work in the workplace? How do you work in a team? Tell me about a time where you resolved a conflict.
Sure.
All things like that. Those are the most basic questions that I hear all the time is tell me about a time when. So I would say preparing for interviews, drill those questions because you're going to get them.
Yeah, and like you said, just the presentation. I mean, and you have to be able to hit it off with people too.
Yes.
If you're just sitting there like a bump on a log, nobody's going to want to have you on their team, and nobody's going to want to work with you. You know, you have to be at least a little bit outgoing, even though you're in an analytical role that you necessarily wouldn't have to, be outgoing.
Yeah. You're still dealing with people, like you said at the beginning.
Exactly.
Right.
Yeah.
Even if you literally don't like talking to people or you just want to put your head down and do your work, sell yourself on that interview.
Yep.
Sell yourself, because if you can't have a conversation with the person who's interviewing you, they're just going to say, okay, next.
Exactly. Yep. I think something that's super helpful for that, I mean, speech class in college is definitely one thing that I think gets a lot of people, I mean, you're never cured of it, but it does force you out of your comfort zone. Groups like Toastmasters. Have you ever heard of Toastmasters?
No, I haven't.
Yeah, it's just like a public speaking group where you get together with a bunch of people and you have like a time in the beginning where everybody has to give like an impromptu 2-minute speech on some random topic that's like they write them out on sheets of paper beforehand, and then you draw it and you have to give a speech. And then you have prepared speeches that you give like once a month or something like that. It's really, so when people say like, I'm not a good public speaker, learn about it. Exactly. There is no excuse. You can get together with other people who are scared and stutter just the same way. Everybody's nervous. You can't just write it off and say, well, that person's good at it. That's not how it works. You know? So, okay. Well, I mean, this is really, I just feel like you're a very driven person and you work hard, and those two things together, you're going to do big things. Where are you headed from here? What are you going to, I mean, obviously you're happy where you're at and you're going to continue learning this job, but what's kind of your end goal? What would you love to do?
So obviously once I graduate, I'm planning to move back to North Carolina, and then hopefully in that same role that I have now. I'm not content staying where I am right now, but I think starting off, it'll be a great position. I would love to get in any sort of leadership role that I could. I love working with people and teaching them and seeing the light bulb click in them. So I would love any sort of opportunity to do leadership, maybe in what I'm doing now, like a managerial role or something like that.
Awesome.
That's exciting. I love it. Well, honestly, kudos to you for just jumping on this. I was like, hey, Ashley would be a great person to have on the podcast. Because one thing, like I was saying before we hit record, it's easy a lot of times. I listen to a lot of podcasts of very successful people, but you feel like their advice is like, okay, you're removed from the trenches now. Yeah. You're no longer in this every day. Right. And so that's one thing that we want with the podcast is to have people that we respect and admire on. And it makes me sound like everybody else is people that we don't respect and admire, but no, but also just younger people who are just making it work every day.
Yeah, just starting out.
Yep, exactly. So I appreciate you jumping on here. Now, where can people find more about you? Do you want us to send people to your LinkedIn or anything like that? Or
yeah, if you'd like, I have my LinkedIn is just my name, Ashley Knowles, and then I also have other social medias, but those are more for leisure.
Sounds good. Okay, well, we'll put a link to your LinkedIn in the show notes. And Danny, is there anything else you want to say before we wrap this up?
No, yeah, it was a really good episode packed with great advice. I enjoyed it.
Fantastic. Well, this will be out right before New Year's, so Happy New Year's, everybody.
Yep.
Thanks, Ashley.
Yep.